that study is called a sewer system evaluation survey, or it goes by the acronym SSES in the literature and in the regulatory environment. So we did start that in the fall. We completed it in the springtime. It's taken a bit of time to find a good evening to share that with you tonight. The document itself, the final document, is about 1,200 pages. So I've summarized it down to like 16 slides tonight, and I think you can appreciate that I probably have skipped over some detail to make it more manageable for this evening. But I think I have the highlights here. So, and then we'll, it was just up. So then we'll obviously take questions. So.
Mr. Ruble, if I can interrupt you, we're getting a little bit of feedback. I'd ask my council members, make sure your phones are away from the microphones, because that tends to cause some static. Please proceed, Mr. Ruble.
So the goal of this type of a study is to locate and quantify what we call infiltration inflow sources, or I/I sources. The location and the quantification is the new part of this. We talked about the general magnitude of I&I last summer. We do an analysis to determine, once we find a source, does it make more sense, more economics to remove it from the sanitary sewer system or to leave it in? Because removing it has a cost associated with it. This allows us to confirm sizes of sanitary sewers and processes at the treatment plant once we know what we can leave in or what we can remove. And it's a necessary step to remain eligible for an SRF loan. When you're looking at a project or projects that manage wet weather, you have to go through these steps. I believe I showed you this slide before. This is a cross-section of a residential street showing typical infiltration and inflow sources from both private property and from the public infrastructure. I won't go through each of these. We can maybe refer back to them, but such things as foundation drains around the basements of homes can be a very large source of I&I. Leaks in manholes, leaks in sanitary sewer pipes themselves. Occasionally some catch basins, some stormwater catch basins do get connected improperly to the sanitary sewer, so that this study will identify those sorts of things. And we'll talk a little bit tonight about downspouts, and sometimes downspouts are improperly connected to the sanitary sewer, and we have a few examples of those to talk about. So real quick, a run through the tasks that we went through last fall and finished up here winter or spring. We performed smoke testing of the sanitary sewer system, and we should thank all the residents in Saline, and particularly the fire department, for the patience during that test. Our crew got to know the fire department quite well by doing that, but it was an important test to do. We opened pretty much every manhole we could find that wasn't buried or wasn't paved over, and inspected its condition. We tried to quantify footing drain flows by measuring a few sump pump responses, footing drains that go to a sump pump. Then we can measure the sump pump performance. We only had one volunteer, and I believe he's a member of your council, and we appreciate his attempt. So our data was actually quite limited in that regard, but we have patched in kind of average rates in southeast Michigan to kind of take the place for that. We reviewed the previous sewer inspections. We did not perform new sewer inspections, so these were ones that were done as part of the asset management plan almost 5 years ago now. This all allowed us to update the computer model that you have, use that to simulate some responses, and in particular we developed what we call I&I control alternatives. So we looked at whether it was less costly to leave sources in or to take them out. That actually generated most of the 1,200 pages of data is those calculations. Again, a map of Saline. The color codes represent responses to wet weather as determined by flow measurements that were taken 3 to 5 years ago. In particular, the pink and the blue were kind of the high and medium areas that had responses. Both the new areas on the east and the new, relatively new development areas on the west had very low responses. So our SSCS really concentrated on the middle part of Saline, in particular the older part of Saline. It did not get smoke testing data at some of the periphery of Saline, just to save cost. We screened that out during the infiltration inflow study. So the findings are here. We determined that there were 671 manholes that had some, defect is somewhat of a strong word, some potential to allow stormwater or groundwater into the sanitary sewer system. We found 8 private properties that had primarily downspouts, or in one case a area drain that was connected to the sanitary sewer. And those can be very large sources if you think about it. And we'll look at one really large rooftop that is connected to your sanitary sewer system. It really introduces a tremendous amount of stormwater. And I have a picture of that. We found 15 sewer laterals, the pipe from the house out to the street, where we got a fairly good amount of smoke coming up through the soil, and we've documented that. A couple of those had missing caps. Laterals have a clean out that a plumber can put tools in to clean out blockages. Some of those laterals were missing caps, and you know, if the water were to pond around that cap, it would be an inlet to the sanitary sewer system. Again, some laterals I talked about. We found 2 city-owned catch basins that we saw some smoke transferred between the sanitary and the storm sewer. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. We don't think that was a direct connection. We think what was happening is smoke was leaking out of the joints of the pipe. It was in very close proximity to the storm sewer, going through a short piece of soil and then entering the storm sewer. We've seen that happen in other communities. There's only 2 of those. One of them looks like it should be a relatively low-cost fix. Based on the sewer televising that we had, there were 9 spots in the sewer system that we saw groundwater coming in that might be on a list for your DPW to keep an eye on in the future. These photographs just show, this is just a sampling of some of the data. The 2 single-family homes on the left, you can see the smoke coming out of the downspouts. So again, that's smoke that we put into the sanitary sewer in the street, and it traveled up the lateral and then through the downspout up to the eave trough. So the conclusion is that the rainwater acts in the reverse direction. It's collected and entered into the sanitary sewer. On the right are a couple of manhole condition assessments, some photographs that were taken. The manhole on the left, you can see some rust-colored, brown-colored staining running from top to bottom. That likely represents stormwater that is leaking around the casting and then entering the sanitary sewer. That water is bringing with it rust and minerals and so forth and staining the concrete. On the right is something also that we located. We found, I want to say 120 sanitary sewer manhole lids that have holes in them. It's called a vented cover. Those holes are largely used on storm sewers where it's not a big deal if water gets into the storm sewer. It's what the storm sewer is there for. On a sanitary sewer, it can allow a fairly significant amount of storm water in. So that's an example. Those are just 2 examples of the 671 that we categorized. On the bottom left, you'll see a building with red, green, and purplish blue shading to it. That's Union School on Ann Arbor Street. The red area we determined has they're downspouts connected to the sanitary sewer. That's the old part of the school. It looks like the green and the blue are later additions. Those had either downspouts that either drained onto the ground surface or connected to a storm sewer, both of which are acceptable methods of disposing of the stormwater. But obviously a roof of that size entering your sanitary sewer is a pretty significant input that should be controlled, should be addressed. On the right is a downtown building, the purple area, and then in particular the red hatching on the upper photo is an area of a patio on the back of a restaurant that is connected to the sanitary sewer. So not only it's part of the roof connect, but also just the patio area itself goes into a private drain, and that goes into the sanitary sewer. Obviously, that should be reconnected to the storm sewer. So those are two of the significant downspouts. And then there was, 8 or 10 single-family homes with downspouts, much smaller areas for a single-family home. Okay. So once we locate all those sources, at the 671 manholes, all those other sources, we do a calculation to determine, this is blank, it was not,
This is what
yeah, it's, I can't explain why that's not there because it has to do with the projector because it was on my laptop just a minute ago.
Okay.
So there's a pie chart in your package where we tried to quantify each of these sources. And I have my hard copy here, so let me. So, roughly about a quarter of the total I&I in the city, we have attributed to footing drains, foundation drains. Again, that's based on an average for Southeast Michigan. It could be quite a bit higher or lower in Saline. We just didn't have enough measurements to adjust that. About 20% we believe is due to manholes. Such as these perforated covers, which are relatively easy to address. About 6% are due to these downspouts. And again, relatively speaking, those are fairly inexpensive to address compared to the amount of stormwater that you get out. Other things here, much smaller quantities like these clean-out caps I talked about, the little leaks that we found in the sanitary sewer, very small quantities, all add up to maybe about 1%. Now, there is another category that we weren't able to quantify. I could think of 4 or 5 reasons for that. If the footing drains are much larger in Saline than average, that would take a bite out of the other. Again, the sanitary sewers that we televised, we only had data for about 10% of Saline. So there's 90% of Saline that still isn't televised. You may recall at the beginning, I told you we just smoke tested the central part of the city. So again, there are some sources on the exterior. We know from flow measurement they're lower in magnitude, but those would be part of the other category too. So all in all, we feel pretty good at what we found, are very good sources. I can't quantify every single drop right now. And it's due to, we didn't study every part of the city primarily. So what we do then, we do calculations. We literally take hundreds, if not 1,000 different sources, and we compare it. Does it make sense cost-wise to leave it in the sanitary sewer and manage it when it gets to the plant? Or do we invest in rehabilitating the source and taking it out? It's source by source. That's what constitutes all those pages. So the conclusion we came to is of the 670 some manholes, it does make sense to invest in about 514 of them. So a fair amount. That's going to be a pretty big chunk to work on your manholes. 6 of the downspouts we would recommend that we addressed. In particular, the 2 big ones were the downtown restaurant and the Union School, and then some single-family homes. There are clean-outs, these missing caps, these broken caps at about 15 homes. That's a pretty small fix, dollar-wise. And then there's one catch basin that showed some smoke transfer from the sanitary to the storm. One looks like it's, it'll be more effective to rehabilitate that than to leave it the way it is. So the benefits, the whole purpose of this is to try to reduce the magnitude of the capital project at the sewers and at the plant. By doing this, we can downsize a future West Belt trunk sewer. That will get a little bit smaller in diameter. The cost will go down a little bit. Same thing with the Central Belt. When we get to the treatment plant, the plan has been to have a storage tank at the treatment plant to capture these wet weather flows. The size of that tank will get smaller. It'll go from about 2 million gallons to about 1.5 million. And that totals up to be about $2.4 million of reduction that will be achieved by rehabilitating your sewer system. So how do you do these rehabilitations? The project plan that we'll review next week does have these costs in there. So you can do that through the SRF loan. That will take some time to design, bid. If you want to package it with the plant project, you know, that's a year plus away before anything would start. DPW, your DPW staff mentioned they had an open contract that has pay items for many of these things, so they're pretty excited about getting started on that even this summer to get some of those things addressed. The private property connections, I reviewed your sewer ordinance, and I think it gives you full authority to request the property owners to help make these repairs on their property. So that's generally how a community does it, is they do make that request of the property owners for the private properties. Just other things to think about. No system is free of I&I. I think that's a goal you'll never get to, but footing drains do make up a big part of it in any older community. Some have elected to have footing drain disconnection programs. I can't make a strong case for it to be cost effective to do, but you know, on a voluntary basis, you know, there's various forms that could take. But I could see, you know, as society progresses, I think we're realizing that allowing those to be connected for most of the 20th century is probably not a good thing for a sewer system. So communities are figuring out ways over decades to address those. You'll do more sewer televising. You'll find more defects. Your DPW staff, I'm certain, will be addressing those as they go. Interestingly, we did find a few catch basins at the wastewater plant that are connected to the sanitary sewer. Those might be logical, small cost fixes to add to a future project, a future big project there. That should help as well to get those out. So I'm very pleased at what we've achieved. Typically, these two I&I study SSCS projects have been a 2-year time frame, and we've done them in a year together, the city and Tetra Tech. And the fee, because we've used data that we had in hand, we've made appeals to Eagle to allow us to use older data, not spend the money to collect new data. We've done it in half the cost from what I've seen and what we've spent in other communities. So half the time and half the cost, and I just feel absolutely proud of being able to do that for you this last year. We've got approvals from Eagle on all of these reports, pretty much without comment, which I'm thrilled about. They've been right along. We've educated them on where we stand, and by doing that, when we get to the end, they pretty much just approved it carte blanche. All this data, too, not only is it a 1,200-page report, but we put it all inside a geographic information system file, and we've delivered those files to your staff. So all this data now is within the city's computer network, computer servers. So as you do future projects, perhaps one of these defects may not be cost-effective from a I&I standpoint, a capital project standpoint, but it may be something you wish to do as part of a road improvement project or so forth. But you'll have that data available to you. This all leads up to our time together next week at the hearing for the project plan. So this was a prerequisite. We knocked this out in the spring. We've been spending the last few months on the project plan. And again, I absolutely thank the council and staff. The smoke testing was important, and we did inconvenience a few residents, but it was short term. I mean, it was 30 minutes, and it was a scary situation, and then we got the house cleared, and life went on as normal. So, but it was important that we did that, and we learned a lot by doing it. I feel good about where we ended up.
That was very thorough, Mr. Rubel. Thank you very much. Ben, you can raise the screen. City Manager Toole, before we open up for questions, is there anything that you would like to add for the record?
No, just that some of these issues have already been identified, and you'll note in our capital improvement plan, which is a part of the consent agenda today, that there is an increased expenditure on storm and specifically stormwater asset management moving forward.
Very good. Well, obviously, as Mr. Rubel indicated, some of these fixes are, can be completed in the short term. Some are a bit more protracted, and I'm assuming, City Manager O'Toole, between you and your staff, you will keep City Council abreast to the progress we're making in resolving these deficiencies, either at public meetings or via your weekly communique. Mr. Rubel, I'm glad that you concluded on the smoke testing because it underscores the importance for our residents and business owners to connect with us online and on social media, because we do report proactively and aggressively on issues that are pertinent to our constituents, including the smoke testing. So this is a reminder to everyone to please connect with us online because we disseminate important announcements all the time. This is a very important initiative. Obviously, if we can reduce infiltration, that creates capacity for more legitimate uses. So that's exciting that you've been able to note some low-hanging fruit, and we will move expeditiously to resolve some of the deficiencies you noted in your presentation. We will do a quick round of questions, either from Mr. Rubel or staff. I'll start to my left and then to my right. Mr. Delorco, Councilmember Delorco, do you have questions for Mr. Rubel or for city staff?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Mr. Rubel, I was wondering if you could shed some light on some quantitative aspects of your study. Do you have a sense of the overall millions of gallons per day that the I&I would be contributing to the problem that we're facing with the infiltration?
Well, it varies by dry day and wet day.
Okay.
And it varies depending on the time of the storm. In round numbers, we think we will be able to reduce through these recommendations about 20% of the I&I during a storm event.
With what you've proposed as
Correct.
Cost-effective remediation?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it has reduced the size of the storage, again, I mentioned earlier, at the wastewater plant from about 2 million gallons to 1.5 million.
The equalization basin?
That's correct.
Okay, so
A
that,
future equalization.
originally we were looking at a 2 million gallon, and this enables us to go down to what size?
1.5 million.
Okay, 1.5. So that's a significant saving.
Yes, it is.
Okay, all right.
It's a big part of the $2.4 million.
Right, okay. And then secondly, I thought I remembered that this was a prerequisite study to make us eligible for the state
It
revolving.
is, indeed.
Does the state evaluate these data in terms of confirming our eligibility for the loan, and will they hold us accountable to a certain metric as to what we need to accomplish through your findings?
Yeah, there's a lot of complications to that question. They will expect you to implement these recommendations. And we will need to ensure through performance that 1.5 million gallon storage is enough.
Okay.
There is a criteria, without getting too technical. The criteria is to essentially control a storm of either 3.9 inches in size, or that this equalization tank will not overflow more frequently than once every 10 years.
Okay.
So they will be looking at that for not only Saline, but every sanitary sewer system that can meet that criteria.
Okay. And lastly, the figure in the pie chart of roughly 25% of the INI coming from the source of old drain footing tiles going into the sanitary.
Yes,
That's a pretty high percentage.
it is.
And I assume there's a lot of complications with mandating that the homeowners would disconnect from the sanitary. And that's a legal challenge as well as an expensive, maybe cost prohibitive one.
Yeah, your neighbor to the north went through that the last 10 or 15 years. Initially had some very good success doing it and cooperation, and then it became somewhat fatigued, I think, with the residents. And many pushed back after a while on the disruption that it occurred in their homes.
Were there legal challenges and did the city prevail?
Yes, well, I think there was a settlement not to proceed, I think is the conclusion I recall.
Okay. That's all I have for now, Brian. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Delarco. Mayor Pro Tem Gearbock, questions for our guest or for city staff?
Just a couple. When you mentioned the sizing of the 2 million gallon tank being downsized to 1.5, does that take into consideration possible climate aspects and additional rain? Or is this just our terminology as it is now, or are the facts as they are now?
Yeah, it does not consider future climate change. I mean, it doesn't mean that Saline couldn't opt for a larger tank. That the $1.5 million is the minimum that you would need to implement.
Do we have enough space if we have to increase that to add?
I believe you do, yeah. And in particular, the space that the Earthen equalization tank that was discontinued a number of years ago would be available for an expansion, yes.
And then when we talk about impervious surfaces, how did this study take that into consideration and what we potentially could be facing in the future as we add more?
Yeah, not directly, because those should be connected to the storm sewer, either pervious or impervious. So it didn't directly consider impervious surfaces.
And then the only thing is, I believe the one thing we can do immediately is to address the issue of private property. And one of the possibilities of all the the manhole covers with the holes simply could be exchanged.
Yes, and earlier this spring, I know DPW Director Searles was looking at getting that started. So, yeah, that's probably the simplest fix that you have.
Some of those you can do just hope trade with another city or company or something. All right, that's it for me. Thank you.
Very good. Councilmember Dillon, questions for Mr. Rubel or city staff?
Thank you. For Mr. Rubel, so I'm going to just sort of piggyback on the previous questions about this reducing the size of the equalization tank. I know it sounds great to say we're going to save $2.5 million. Is that a short-sighted savings? Do you think that that at some point we have to if we have to upsize, is there going to be an issue? I know we've got the space for it, but then are we creating a secondary tank? And, what is the cost associated with that? Where if we've already got it built in to what we're doing now, is it worth it to make that change?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm a pretty conservative guy. Around my house, I always budget more than I need, So that's something that you could consider, going back to the 2 and just leaving a 500,000 gallon buffer. Another interesting thing about tanks, in particular steel tanks, is you can raise them. And by raising them, you can get more storage. I did this in another community in Michigan where I haven't had to raise it yet, but we designed the walls so that you can continue to just raise the tank higher. And that gives you more storage by doing that. So there is some resiliency, I guess, in the sizing by doing that.
Okay. And then how would growth of the city be impacted?
Not a lot in the SSES, but I mean, obviously growth in the city will impact going from, say, phase one at the wastewater plant to phase two.
Right.
By doing some of this, though, as the mayor very correctly indicated, it does allow you to do more growth before phase two would occur.
No, I understand that. So short-sighted growth, we would be able to, we'd have capacity, is what you're saying? If we do that. If we do this,
You'll still need to do the phase one project.
oh, absolutely.
Okay.
But
It will
does give us a little bit more latitude?
It will delay the timing of phase two.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's good to know. What do you estimate for the time frame for these type of corrections? Is this something that is an easy fix? Is it, an 18-month fix? Is it a 5-year plan?
Yeah, I mean, the sewers could take a couple of years. If you started today, it would take several months to get a bid document together. It would take a better part of a year probably to get that contract completed. It's not uncommon that communities I work with bundle this together with the wastewater project and do it on the same time frame. That's probably the most common, but I don't want to claim that has to be done that way.
And I'll just end by saying thank you very much that this ties into the GIS data collection system. The more we can get that information into that database, the easier it will be going forward because we won't be reinventing, the wheel every time.
Absolutely.
We're trying to start over. So thank you very much for
My
that
pleasure.
aspect. And I'm all set there.
Thank you. Councilmember Steele, any questions for Mr. Rubel or city staff?
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. Mr. Rubel, I've always wondered the efficacy of these steel manhole covers. They all have a hole in them, at least one anyway.
They do.
So they can drag the thing off with a tool
Correct.
when they need to get down inside. In the picture you show here, where it shows the rust stains going down the side of the well, how effectively do those manholes normally seal or seat? Enough to
Yeah.
prevent seepage around the edge like that?
This one is a little bit more than we've seen typically. That's why we put it in there. Yeah, I can't say that any of them are perfectly watertight. It's a steel cover on a steel frame. But it's measured usually in fractions of a gallon per minute.
Okay.
This one looked like it might be more of several gallons per minute during a storm.
All right,
And it depends on where the manhole is too in the street. If it's in the middle of the street, it doesn't have a lot of water ponding on it. If it's at curb line, that would mean a little bit more attention. And we did prioritize recommendations based on location.
and how many of these sanitary covers did you say had multiple holes?
My memory, it does fail me at times, is around 120.
Okay, that's just happens over time when people throw any old cover back on a,
I suspect that's right.
okay,
Or there was not a good practice at some point in the past to put them on at initiation. I don't, some communities do feel that provides ventilation of the sanitary sewer, but it also provides a pathway for the I and I. So.
Right. Okay, that's all I have, Your Honor, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Steele. Councilmember Kamara Sulak, any questions for our guest or city staff?
Yes, I do, thank you. Thank you for all the information, Mr.
My
Rubel.
pleasure.
You mentioned about an earthen storage tank,
Yes.
so that's existing?
Yes, it was constructed in the late 1980s. I picked up a little bit through your ad hoc committee that it was taken out of service in the 1990s because it is earthen lined, it does not have a cover, and therefore, when it fills, it creates an odor problem.
Okay. Is there any way to cover it and use that as for additional capacity?
I think at this point, with the number of trees that have taken root, it probably does not have significant value
Okay,
to the city any longer.
all right.
It's a good
that's fair.
question.
And then to the 2.4 million in savings, that's mostly the sizing of the tank, and then the trunk,
That's correct.
lines.
That is correct.
That's like a one-time cost savings, and is there a annual cost savings of having a more downsized and efficient system?
Absolutely. And for time efficiency, I didn't go through that tonight, but that's an excellent question. By removing the I&I from the system, you will reduce energy cost, you will reduce chemical cost. All those are operating costs that are included in my analysis, but I did not present those tonight for time sakes. So,
Do you happen to have access to them to give us an idea of how significant those would be? Because I think that would be helpful.
I'm certain I could pull that out of here. Because it only rains a few hundred hours a year, that generally doesn't end up to be hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. It ends up being more like thousands or a few tens of thousands. But it's something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. And if we continue to get more precipitation,
If I may interject, perhaps, Mr. Rubel, you could do a deeper dive on that and get some numbers to the city manager to disseminate them out.
It's in here. I'll just pull it out and share that with Ms. O'Toole.
Thank you. My apologies, Mr. President. Please continue.
all right. Actually, that's all that I have. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Kraus, any questions for Mr. Rubel or city staff?
I'm good, thanks.
Easy enough. Mr. Rubel, thank you for your time. In the event that any of my colleagues have additional questions regarding this issue, please direct them to the city manager, and she will make sure it is either sent to Mr. Rubel or any other individual who is best
Thank you
to
for
address
having
your
me.
questions and concerns. Thanks again. Appreciate their analysis. Very thorough. We proceed now to the consent agenda. The following consent agenda will normally be adopted without discussion. However, at the request of any council member or citizen, any item may be removed from the consent agenda for discussion. I'll actually move to approve the consent agenda as amended. I'm going to strike C-22-135. That's my apology. My normal practice is to interview and speak with prospective board and commission appointees prior to their appointment. That was not done in this case, so it's nothing against this individual. We'll make contact with her tomorrow, and that will likely reappear on the June 20th council agenda for your consideration. So again, I'll move to approve the consent agenda as amended, noting that one subtraction.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Morrow, seconded by CO to approve the consent agenda as amended. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion carries unanimously. We move on to public hearing 22-112 FY23 General Appropriations Act. This is our budget for the upcoming fiscal year. First, we need a motion to open the public hearing at 8 p.m., affording our constituents the opportunity to speak to this issue. That was moved by Gearbaugh. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Kamira Sulek to open the public hearing at 8 p.m. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Public hearing is now open. Is there anyone who wishes to speak? You will be limited to 3 minutes.
Mary Hess. I was wondering, over the years, I know we have a city rating as far as our bonding and our bills and our revenue. Could anyone tell me what our present city rating is? We had some Bs and some As, but presently?
We're presently a AA.
Any additional citizen comments? Clerk Royal, let me defer to you. Is there anybody who communicated with you in advance of tonight's meeting which they wanted their comments read at this time? Very good. Is there a motion to close the public hearing then at 8:01?
Move to close.
Moved by Gearboss, seconded by CO. I'll get you on the next one, Kraus, to close the public hearing. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Public hearing is now closed. Treasurer Bennett, before we proceed to the third and final motion, would you care to offer some obligatory comments for the public's benefit? And if you wouldn't mind addressing Mrs. Hess's initial inquiry, just stating the impact of the fire special assessment and what sort of, what impact that will have on our residents and business owners for this upcoming fiscal year.
Absolutely, thank you. So the budget that you have before you in the General Appropriations Act does include a total millage of 17.5698 between the 7.7 fire special assessment that we are levying and the rollback of Headley that nets out to 0.3404 of a mill increase. So not not the full 7/10 for sure. Included in that is your 13.865 for general operations of the general fund. And then we also have this debt millage, and we have millage for our refuse, picking up that. And we also have the street mill of 1 mill that the residents have voted. We have had our work sessions on this, and the General Appropriations Act was posted on our website, along with being available for review here at City Hall and at the Saline District Library. And I think that's what I have for you. At the end of the fiscal year, we are proposing we have a balanced budget, as we always do, and we are proposing, boy, I should have this number, I'm sorry. Let me grab my projection sheet here. At the end of the fiscal year, we are proposing a net gain in our fund balance of,
You look for that number, and I'll defer to the city manager in the event that she has any.
yeah, it's 88, we're increasing it by $88,910. I couldn't,
Shy of 90,000.
yeah.
City Manager O'Toole, is there anything that you would like to add?
Just that this budget does reflect some of the strategic goals that we identified, specifically a significant concentration on strengthening our core services. There's some additional staffing on both the police and public works side that I believe will help us continue to serve our residents' need, both as our community grows and our existing needs.
Yep, very good. Actually, I was going to touch on that because that was a topic that we discussed at length during our strategic planning sessions at the end of 2021. And of course, it's a topic that I addressed in my January State of the City address. I'll be elaborating on it, of course, in July. But there is a renewed focus on core services, on public safety and infrastructure specifically. And this budget invests heavily in those areas. And I think that's to the primary benefit of our residents and business owners. So when we get to the motion, I'll be enthusiastically supporting adoption. Ms. Bennett, anything else?
The other thing I would like to add is that with the adoption of this budget, we will also be presenting our first electronic budget available for our residents. There'll be a link on our website that will take them to a electronic budget as well as our capital improvement plan. As you may be aware, the capital improvement plan is a 6-year plan where we lay out what we anticipate in our capital cost, and that has a significant impact on our budget. Those two documents, for transparency's sake, will be available on our city's website in the first time in an electronic format like this.
Excellent. Okay. We'll proceed with the motion, then we'll open it up for any final questions or comments. So at this time, the chair would entertain a motion to acknowledge receipt of the May 31st, 2022 memo from Deputy Treasurer McDonough regarding General Appropriations Act budget for FY23, and to approve or not to approve the resolution as submitted adopting the General Appropriations Act budget for fiscal year 2022-2023, providing the general operating millage of 13.865 mils, including portion funding required for fire special protection, the 2004 street debt millage of 0.3276 mils, refuge millage of 1.6772 mils, street millage of 1 mil, and fire special assessment of 0.7000 mils.
Move to acknowledge and approve.
Moved by CO to acknowledge and to approve. Is that a
Second.
second by you, Mr. Gearbaugh?
Yes.
Okay, very good. I'll get you on the next one, Ms. Dillon. Bittersweet for you. This is your
Yes.
farewell budget.
This is my farewell budget. And it doesn't have a dime in it for me.
You didn't expect that it would, did you? Very good. Well, thank you for your work on this, and thank you to all the staff who contributed during this process. Are there questions or comments for the city treasurer or for staff more broadly? Mr. Seal.
Just generally for the staff, again, thank you all very much for the hard work it takes to bring us a balanced budget of this magnitude. It's greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Any additional comments or questions? Then we'll proceed to vote. It's been properly moved by Seal, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Gearbaugh to acknowledge and to approve. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Treasurer Bennett.
Okay, thank you.
We move on to new business item 22-124, Gun Violence Awareness Proclamation. This will be a motion to approve or not to approve the Gun Violence Awareness Proclamation as amended. I think Mr. Mayor Pro Tem Gearbaugh offered a very
Minor change.
a minor change, excuse me.
Yes.
That was the terminology I'm looking for. So Councilmember Kraus will acknowledge the change once we have a motion on the floor. So is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Sulak, seconded by Gearbaugh. So first, obviously, thanks to all of our residents and community stakeholders who attended tonight and who were passionate about this particular issue. I do want to acknowledge, of course, our school board president and I think a working quorum of the school board that's here this evening. I also want to acknowledge and I thank my colleague, Councilmember Kraus. She gave me a little cheat sheet here. Monique Hunter and Susie Traber from Moms Demand Action, Washtenaw County. And they'll be speaking briefly and answering questions about the proclamation. Again, also the school board and Chief Radzik will be on hand in the event there might be questions that are pertinent for them. Councilmember Kraus, would you like to add anything? If you would, primarily for the public's benefit, articulate the modification that Mr. Gearbaugh has made to the proclamation.
Sure, thank you. So ironically enough, before the latest round of, of tragedies that have occurred, I was speaking with some Moms Demand Action members about the gun proclamation, the gun safety proclamation. And then with the recent round of tragedies, it became even more important for all of us community leaders. I reached out to the school board and other community leaders just so we could kind of show you, that we're in it together. And I don't have the answers, they don't have the answers, but it's important to us. And so the one thing we are going to change, and maybe Mr. Gearbaugh, maybe you want to just read real quick what you changed?
Yeah, it's just inserting in the 8th whereas after mayors, local elected officials.
Okay. Thank you for noticing that. I didn't catch that, so appreciate it.
That change will be made without objection.
Yes. So anyway, I just, if the board would indulge me, we're going to just have a brief. I'd like to invite up the Moms Demand folks here to introduce themselves and just briefly let us know what they've been doing and why this is important and how we can help.
Thanks for being here. We appreciate your patience.
Thank you. We give a heartfelt thank you to Saline City Council and Mayor Morrow for the Gun Violence Awareness Proclamation. Moms Demand Action is a grassroots movement of Americans fighting for gun safety measures, stronger gun laws, and responsible gun ownership. It started with one mom after Sandy Hook tragedy and now includes moms, dads, students, gun violence survivors, and gun owners all working together to protect and save lives. The color for gun violence prevention movement is orange. Orange is the color that Hadiya Pendleton's friends wore in her honor after she was shot and killed at the age of 15, just 1 week after performing at President Obama's second inaugural parade. Orange is also the color worn by hunters for gun safety. So we wear orange to honor the lives of Americans stolen by gun violence, to help keep firearms out of the hands of people who shouldn't have them, and to protect our communities from gun violence. All countries have bullying, violent games, video games and movies, negative influences of social media, and mental illness, but there's no evidence that the United States has more of these than any other country. But what is unique to America is the amount of guns we own. U.S. civilians own more guns than any other high-income country. We have 120 guns for every 100 citizens, and are the only country to have more guns than citizens. Our nation has had at least 10 mass shootings since Friday, bringing the total to 246 mass shootings this year. Last year, we had 692 mass shootings. Right now, we all need to come together to work to reduce gun violence. Nobody wants a shooting at their school or in their neighborhood. We can be gun owners and be responsible and enact gun safety laws. They are not mutually exclusive.
Hi, thank you for having us. I'm Susie Traber. I've lived in Saline for about 40 years, and I have 5 daughters who've gone through Saline schools. As our nation continues to reel from gun violence, here are some additional facts. Firearms are the leading cause of death for American children and teens, surpassing motor vehicles and cancer. More than 110 Americans are killed by gun violence each day, and more than 200 are injured. The U.S. gun suicide rate is nearly 12 times that of other high-income countries. The U.S. gun homicide rate is 26 times higher than that of other high-income countries. Every month, an average of 70 women in the U.S. are shot and killed by an intimate partner, and many more are shot and wounded. So in summary, the U.S. has a much higher rate of gun suicide, gun homicide, mass shootings, and school shootings than any other high-income country. Wear Orange events were held over this past weekend, but you can continue to support community organizations like Moms Demand Action that are committed to ending gun violence and passing common sense gun laws. Saline City Council, we urge you to support the Gun Violence Awareness Proclamation. Thank you very much.
Very good. Councilmember Kraus, and then we'll open it up for any questions for our guests.
Sure, thank you. Thank you for being here. It seems like not a lot to issue a proclamation. It seems like a piece of paper, and we all seem kind of like there's nothing we can really do to help, but at least we're going to go on record that leaders in this town, in Saline, Michigan, school, community leaders, parents, everybody, we're looking out for our kids, our residents, our neighbors, and to what extent we can encourage safe gun use and safe gun, ownership, we are going to do that. And so we will be on record, hopefully, if this passes, and, that we will be on record that that's what Saline is about. So appreciate you coming. We also have County Commissioner Shannon Beeman with us. So I appreciate her coming as well. And then many thanks to the school board, except for Mr. McVeigh, who's out of town. The entire school board is here, so that makes me very proud. Oh, sorry, Susan. Oh, gosh. Oh, she absolutely would be if she could. But I just appreciate you coming and showing, you are leaders too, and we're in it together. So if there's questions, the Moms Demand, I keep saying the Mom Demand folks, I'm sorry, that's probably not, or County Commissioner Beeman or any of our school officials, they can speak on certain things, but not all of the things. Feel free to ask them before we vote.
Well, let me just say that I obviously be enthusiastically supporting the proclamation. I thank Councilmember Kraus's leadership in bringing it to the dais this evening. Ladies, thank you for your attendance and, more importantly, for your advocacy. We seem to have tragedy after tragedy, and unfortunately, we've got too many politicians at both the state and federal level who continue to sit around like last year's Christmas trees and do nothing. And we do need some action. And I'm saying that as a proud gun owner. And I think there's a lot of sensible things that can be done, including if the United States Senate wanted to act on it. One great, albeit small step would be to vote on the Manchin-Toomey bill this week. And I also know that there's a bipartisan group of United States senators working on some potential outcomes as well. And I hope that bears fruit because we desperately need some action. And some safeguards and reasonable restrictions are warranted. So thank you. Before I open up for questions for our guests, Chief Radzik, anything that you would like to add at this time? No? Okay. Questions then for the sponsor of the proclamation, Councilmember Kraus, or our guest from Moms Demand Action?
I have no question. I'm in support of this.
Okay. Mr. Gearbaugh?
No questions, just appreciate your action in doing this.
Ms. Dillon?
No questions, thank you for being here.
Mr. Seal?
I have no questions either. Thank you.
Mr. Commissioner Sulek?
No questions. I'm just glad that we're addressing this and that we're all in it together.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank
Any subsequent discussion on the motion?
I just wanted to let people know that Chief Radzik did, we do have a supply of gun locks, and so anybody listening, watching, anybody that you know in your neighborhood who might have one, feel free to reach out. They're free. They're always in dispatch, I believe, correct? Or if they have questions about if they find a gun, to reach out. I did want to have one quick picture of everybody for the Moms Demands Action Group.
Sure.
So if we could come to the leaders who are here to support, if you could join us.
Yeah, we'll take the vote first, and then we'll take a very brief recess.
After the vote.
Yep, to take a photo. Pictures so we make it official. And I do want to acknowledge, because Chief Radzik is here, we are planning to do a video and a communique on school safety and gun violence, and we're working with some of our regional stakeholders and partners. And if that's not produced this week, it will certainly be done in the very near future. Anything else, Councilmember?
No, thank you.
Okay. Then we do have a motion on the floor moved by Commissioner Sulak, seconded by Gearbaugh, to approve the proclamation as amended. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion carries unanimously. We will take just a minute or two recess if you'd like to get a picture.
got it.
Thank you for all for being here.
Okay, friends, we're going to move on to new business item 22-129. This is Salty Summer Sounds update. This will be a motion to approve or not to approve the updates to Salty Summer Sounds summer event.
Motion to approve.
Moved by Kraus
Second.
to approve. Was that seconded by Commander Sulak?
It is.
Thank you very much. Clerk Royal, do you care to make any comments before I turn it over to our Main Street Board President? Easy enough. Jill, you want to make sure that microphone's on, and then the floor is yours if you want to provide a brief update.
Yep, good evening, everyone. After our meeting with the fire chief a couple of weeks ago, I just needed to resubmit the application amended for this summer. So the major changes from the application that was approved in December are, we shortened it from 12 weeks to 10 weeks. That was for budgetary purposes. That was going to happen regardless of our meeting with the fire chief. And then the other part is just changing the location from South Ann Arbor Street to North Ann Arbor Street with the map that was included. I originally submitted with one map that we've used in the past when we had concerts on both sides during road construction in 2016. And then after a few discussions with Police Chief Radzik, I submitted the second one because I realized we didn't include the barricade arrangement at McKay Street. So I'm open for any questions from you.
Very good. Thanks for your quick turnaround on this, too, Jill. We appreciate it. Questions for our guest or for city staff? Councilmember Dillon?
Thank you.
Back to you.
There are just two questions on the application. There is one spot under event information where it says include 4 to 6 vendor booth tents.
Okay.
Are you planning to have vendors?
No, it's available for downtown businesses who who are on the opposite side of the street, who want to have space on that side. It's been approved at other, every event application since 2016. It's there in case we wanted to have it, but we don't have any specific plans to have specific vendors on that side. It's
So
just there.
it's strictly for downtown business?
That was the original thought when we did it. We've offered it up for the past few years, and no one's taken advantage of it, but we keep it in the application just in case.
Okay. And then my other question was, with being on the other side of Michigan Avenue, should there be consideration for having porta-johns? Or are you going to still direct people to below?
In the past, when we had concerts on the north side, the Presbyterian Church opened up their space for restrooms. I'm glad you brought that up because I completely forgot about that. So I will definitely reach out to them, and then if not, porta-johns are not in our budget, and I don't know how we would bring them in and out for 2 hours a week. So I would think that people would just go home if they have to use the bathroom.
Okay.
But yes, I mean, I will reach out to the Presbyterian Church.
I
see
just
if
want to
they'll
make
have it
sure,
available.
because I don't want to put that undue burden on, like, dams or something,
Sure.
where people think that there's going to be a public restroom there. So I think that if there isn't an opportunity to use the Presbyterian Church, we may want to bring this back and figure out a way that we can have a restroom available.
They can use mine in my office.
Or
I'm right
however it works. I just want to make sure that we do have something available for
Sure.
people.
Is that it?
Oh, and then just for clarification, so it looks like this is the new map, correct?
Yes, yep, it includes the intersection of McKay and
Right.
and North End.
And I don't want to steal Mr. Gearbaugh's thunder about this. And so it's just, there's some questions about the barricade at McKay, on Ann Arbor at
Yes, and I've had a few conversations offline with Chief Reddick about that. What we had done in the past was we had one barricade there just to notify people who are coming up the hill that the road is closed, so they have the opportunity to turn left or right onto McKay Street. And then we have to keep the road open to the parking lot to keep that available. So in the past, people would come in and be able to go out, and we didn't have any issues with people coming together at that one open lane. But we do have history from when we had Umbrella Square closed before, where we left that end open and just had a no outlet sign at that corner to notify traffic that that road ahead is closed. Because you can see the barricades, but we wanted to have something there to notify them before they got into that little area and maybe got stuck. So we do have that available too, if that's preferred. So we're open to whatever
My issue
deterrents
is
we
just
want.
to understand what the chief's recommendation, if she's satisfied with what you two came up with.
Yeah, we brought the sign just so you could see it. So yeah, we're fine with that no outlet and leaving the barricade not at that corner. We're perfectly fine with that.
I'd like the record to reflect, Chief Reddick, you're good with that? Yes. Very good. Councilmember Dillon, anything else?
That's all, thank you very much.
Mr. Gearba, anything?
That was my.
Okay, easy enough. Mr. Seal?
I just want to thank you, ladies, for being flexible in working through these safety concerns
Oh, sure.
that were raised and, in keeping this, this important, I think, concert series for this summer.
Yep, it'll be a little bit different because the space is smaller. We can't have the tents and things like that we
Yep.
have in the past, but yeah. We've had it on North before. We'll do it again, and the businesses who are on the north side are over the moon.
Mr. Delrico?
Just kind of personal question. Is Alex Johnson still booking the acts for the
He
event?
is he's booking the whole summer.
So the game is going to be better this year.
Yeah, we do have the lineup. We're going to order postcards and posters tomorrow.
Excellent, thank you.
Yep.
Anything else? Mr. Mayor Sulak?
In addition to being flexible, I'd like to say thank you for all the finessing and changes that you've had to do and Saline Main Street.
Oh, thank you.
It's really appreciated that we can all work together and make this work, because I don't want to miss him, and I'm sure everybody in the community, from what I've heard lately, is really looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun summer. I'm excited about it.
Thank you.
Very good. Jill, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Holly, appreciate you being here as well. If there's nothing further, we do have a motion on the floor to approve. It's been moved by Kraus, seconded by Mayor Sulak. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you all. We move on to new business item 22-130, sprinkler system credit request at 322 Aberdeen Court. Let's start with just a motion to acknowledge receipt of the May 10th, 2022 memo from Treasurer Bennett.
So moved.
Moved by Gearba, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dillon. Treasurer Bennett, do you care to make a comment? Is the petitioner here, by the way? He is not. Okay.
So I just want to make sure that we're on, that I kind of give you a quick little background on this. The way that we're set up, obviously, is that I don't want to start and sound so basic, but I'm going to, so bear with me. This is my last finale, so bear with me. So we have the meters, that we have in everyone's home. We have a water sprinkler meter system that does not charge a resident sewage usage for an irrigation system if they pull the permits and get the meter installed. During the read that incorporated February read, this gentleman's meter registered 10,000 gallons of water, which generated a $40 water-only bill. And the gentleman's response, in all fairness, was that he had had his meter shut down by his sprinkler system, and there was no way that that water could have been used. The city council, through the years of, my working here, we have set policies that if we can see where the water went and didn't go into the sewer system, we have some policies for sewer credit relief. When it comes to something like this, what our first option typically is, because the resident is adamant that this consumption wasn't used, and immediately appealed to the city council through the clerk's office. And so the administrative assistant, Miley Weberline, had prepared a memo and asked me to look at it. And my comment to her was, why don't we wait until we get the irrigation system open and then have their, his company test to see if there's any leaks or anything like that. Well, that was unacceptable to the resident because he was not going to pay to have the system opened again. They were just going to open it themselves this year. They weren't paying for a sprinkler system to be done. So my argument to the gentleman is that we have a meter in place that registers consumption, so somewhere that consumption was used. We can test that meter, and if we take that and replace your meter, and if we find that's done by a third party, an outside third party, and if we find that that meter is faulty, then we'll take action and, we would go from there. However, if we find that that meter is not faulty, our policy is that the homeowner would pay for that inspection, which was not acceptable to the resident. So,
Can I stop you there?
you sure can.
Because I've dealt with several of these issues during my time as both a council member and mayor. That policy dates back, does that predate your tenure with the city of Saline?
The policy for meter testing?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, please continue.
It's 36 years, so. So because the rates and everything are set by this board, I do not have the authority to waive this, even under the administrative policy that this council has presented to give me. So it's under those reasonings and those guidelines that I'm bringing this to your attention this evening.
Fair enough. I think the policy that we have enacted, and again, it dates back more than 36 years, is appropriate and sufficient. It does provide recourse to business owners and residents. Generally speaking, when a meter is defective, it doesn't,
No.
it undercharges.
Absolutely.
It's not the other way around. So that's this gentleman's recourse. I'm happy to open it up for questions for the city treasurer, but I would not be in favor of a motion to approve the waiver.
I would say as well that we have sent, as we always do, our DPW has went out there to look at the meter. I have put this situation out to not only our city manager, but our Department of Public Works director to see if there's something that I'm missing that possibly could happen. But my feeling is somewhere that water got used, it went through our meter, and that $40 is due and payable.
And City Manager O'Toole, I don't mean to put you on the spot, because you and I haven't actually had a conversation about this, but I would assume that your assessment is that the existing policy and ability for residents to have recourse and have their meter tested by an independent third party is sufficient.
Yes, I do agree that, though I would note that technically speaking, the administrative approvals that we have for credits are exclusive to sewer and not water. So I would recommend council consider expanding that policy to include the same administrative procedures for internal approvals to the water side.
I don't think there would be any objection to that, so I think you could come back at a subsequent meeting, and we can make that change. Ms. Bennett, anything else you'd like to add on this issue?
No.
Okay, any questions for the city treasurer regarding this matter? Mayor Pro Tem Gearbox.
Partly the treasurer, but maybe for Manager O'Toole, we had talked about, is that the only piece that you need to have us change is for the water, or, because one of the things we were talking about was trying to correct the administrative nightmare and the costs associated with all of this investigation, everything, is to give the proper authority to the treasurer without having in this type of situation under a certain dollar amount coming to this council.
Yes, I'd like to confer with legal on that subject, but I agree with you. To avoid kind of frivolous claims, perhaps there's additional stopgap measures we can put in place, some sort of fee that's assessed if they fail to meet the due diligence standards for proving that, that the credit is due.
Especially if they're not willing to follow our policy of testing the meter, because I think we're willing to do that, but yeah, there's a cost to it.
And, we tell them that it is a third party testing that meter. We don't have any control over those results. And I do think that an administrative policy, and it worked for quite a long time. We've been doing and rolling along with that, but it seems like the last two meetings we've had some minimal that I've brought to your attention, and I just wanted to be clear that they both fall outside of the existing policy. Yep, I agree.
Any additional questions for the city treasurer regarding this matter? Okay, we have a motion on the floor moved by Gearbox, seconded by Dillon to acknowledge receipt. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. Is there any subsequent motion that anyone would like to offer from the floor? Either to approve or not to approve?
Then we'll simply proceed to the next item. Thank you, Treasurer Bennett. Next item is 22-131, request to have food truck at Mill Pond Park. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of a letter from Chrissy Myers and to approve or not to approve the request for food truck in Mill Pond Park on Saturday, July 30th, 2022.
Move to acknowledge.
Simply move to acknowledge by Councilmember Seal. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Dylan. I'll get you on the next one, Mr. Sulak. Clerk Royal, do you care to comment for the record? And again, is the petitioner here? Okay, please. Okay. Are there, Mr. Seal, questions for the city clerk?
This is the first time for this kind of a request, is it not?
It is. When we did the food trucks back in, I think it was 3 to 4 years ago, we approved them for places that had parking lots like Baker's Nook, Stony Brewery. But anything that goes on city streets or on the parks has to come to council per the ordinance.
Right.
So when they had this, and this is for Saline Area Social Services, so it's for a good cause. But because it is a city park, it does have to come before council. I can't approve that without your approval.
Anything else, Mr. Seal?
No.
Councilmember Dillon?
Has an event request been submitted?
She has just, she gave a letter asking for it. She hasn't given any, like, she did the map, so I sent the map to the fire chief and to the police chief and to Larry Searles for a DPW. So everybody has seen where the things are going, but she hasn't actually applied for an event permit per se.
And I apologize if it said in here and I missed it. Do you know, will these food trucks all be self-sufficient with their own water and power? Or is the city providing power to all of the trucks?
I believe they're all self-sufficient
They're all
because
okay.
I don't think we would be able to do
Okay.
that.
That's, I just wanted to make sure
Yeah.
that we were not overcommitting ourselves in that source. Okay, that was the only questions I had. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Gearba?
We don't anticipate any other waiving of fees or anything for this event?
No, any fees would be paid. They would
Okay.
pay it.
The only point I want to make is, we had a similar situation about a month ago that somebody wanted to have a food truck down in the park for a private event. Has that been addressed? This may be the city manager.
We allowed that because I did not have, they had already planned it and did not have enough time, so I believe that's the one we allowed.
Okay, I just wondered how we were going to proceed with those going forward, if we need to change our policy for that type of situation, or is it going to?
That was a miscommunication between the parks and the clerk's office, so we've established that, we've fixed that issue going forward, so.
Thank you.
Mr. Seal?
One more question. There are two layouts here that I see. Is one just for inclement weather?
No, the second one was to address the food trucks where they're going to be located because the fire chief had issues with it. So the first one was what she submitted with her request, and then the second one is the updated one to appease the police chief and fire chief.
I see. Okay. So the second one would be the one that would be utilized.
Correct, that was a Friday update that I had sent out, so yes.
Mr. Delarco?
So have all three department heads signed off on this request for approval?
Yes.
Okay, that's all I have.
Okay, if there's no additional questions, we do have a motion on the floor. Thank you, Clerk Royal. We do have a motion on the floor moved by Seal, seconded by Dillon to simply acknowledge receipt. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. How about a motion now to approve or not to approve the request for food trucks at Mill Pond Park on Saturday, July 30th, 2022?
Move to approve.
Moved by Kraus, was that seconded by Delarco?
Yes, yeah.
Thank you very much. Any additional discussion or comments? Ms. Dillon?
Following up on what Mr. Gearbaugh had mentioned earlier, I would like to make sure that we have sort of a firm understanding of what we're allowing, what we're not allowing, and what that criteria is, because I think that now this will be the second time that we're going to look at people wanting to have grad parties in our parks with food trucks, and we just need to address it so that people have an understanding when they come to us and we from this side of the dais have an understanding of what that expectation is. So I think if we can have some sort of clarity as to what our policy is and what the threshold is would be great moving forward.
Very good. Any additional comments?
Just to tap into that, especially when it's fundraising, I think that's the one thing that we've got to do over the years to be kind of a little cautious with. So I appreciate that, Ms. Dillon, for bringing that up.
And actually, prior to that, noting the issue that transpired about a month ago that was noted by Mayor Pro Tem Gearbaugh, I think some sort of obligatory social media post or comment in our FYI newsletter indicating that per policy, if you want to have a food truck at Mill Pond Park, based on current protocols, that requires approval by City Council. So that people are very clear as to what the rules are. I think most people are inclined to follow the rules, they just want to know what they are. Okay? Very good. All right, we have a motion on the floor moved by Kraus, seconded by Del Orco to approve. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it. Motion carries unanimously. Last action item of the evening is 22-133, iron filter 10-inch valve replacement. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the May 18, 2022 memo from wastewater treatment Superintendent Briggs and to approve or not to approve the quote and purchase of replacement of valves for Midwest Power for $26,352.
Move to acknowledge and approve.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Gearbaugh to acknowledge and to approve. Is that seconded by Commissioner Sulak? Osio, excuse me. Thank you. Mr. Briggs.
So these valves were, I'd hoped to be able to slate for replacement, encompassing the rework of the iron filters themselves, because they'd be down and we could do it. But for some reason in the last few weeks, the amount of water leaking past these valves has increased greatly. And so I have no choice really but to try and get them done.
Yep.
Toot sweet, so.
I'm glad you included this on tonight's agenda. Thank you, Bill. Questions for our wastewater treatment superintendent? Councilmember Dillon.
Thank you, and it may not be for Mr. Briggs, it may be for City Manager O'Toole, which is, when things say that they are not previously budgeted, so what account is, how are we paying for this?
Well, the wastewater treatment plant does have reserve dollars. We have those maintenance dollars, which I think we realized more recently we could be a bit more flexible with. So typically that's, if there's not room within another line item budget, something that didn't get spent, that's where that would come from.
Thank you very much for the clarification.
Good question. Additional questions from the dais? Any comments before we vote? Bill, thank you very much. Appreciate it. It's been properly moved by Gearbaugh, seconded by CO to acknowledge and to approve. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it. Motion carries unanimously. We'll start with, we'll transition now to discussion items, commission, committee, and task force reports. I'll begin with, again, on my left and end to my right. Mr. Del Orco, any commission, committee, or task force reports?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, last Environmental Commission meeting, we worked diligently to amend our bylaws to include the entire Saline area school district as opposed to just the city of Saline for candidacy of voting members in an effort to engender and encourage more participation. We've been struggling on the Environmental Commission operating at just quorum, and if one member is not present, we're unable to have our meetings. So we really need to get more participation, get more members on the board, and this was the way that we came up with to do that. So heads up, I'll be sending out an email to council and asking that the bylaws be added to the consent agenda in a subsequent meeting.
So Clerk Royal, between Mr. Del Orco or their staff liaison, Mr. Schonk, they'll be in touch with you to make sure that that's included on the next, well, not the next agenda, but our next regular meeting agenda, which will be the 20th. Mr. Gearbaugh, is that it, Mr. Del Orco?
That's it, thank you.
Mr. Gearbaugh, any commission, committee, or task force reports?
Yeah, just a couple. One that I want this week will be Planning Commission. We're going to be meeting to discuss the Pittsfield Township's master plan. I believe that's the only item on the agenda. And then Lori Champion, our consultant that has worked with us for our risk management assessment, we met this week with City Manager O'Toole to discuss time for us to get together again as our group to do an annual evaluation, especially with some of the most recent incidents and things that are happening and election issues and concerns that we need to be prepared for those. And so we're going to be scheduling a meeting in July to bring the group together and then review what's been accomplished and what may need to change in the coming year. And then lastly, I just want to make a motion when you are concerned about the quorums. I've been at a couple meetings and that has begun to become a concern and an issue in a number of our commissions of quorums being able to meet and having people together and how we can figure a way of working this. Because I think a lot of the individuals that participate want to be able to be there, but other demands, other things are causing issues where they can't attend. But that's not being customer service oriented or citizen oriented in terms of being able to make decisions quickly, and especially in certain issues where they have to come back 1 or 2 or 3 times. At that point, I think is poor on our side. So somehow we need to discuss that and really address that going forward.
I think that's a good point. I think we should start by each one of us, because we serve as liaisons to a number of boards, committees, and task forces at your next meeting, whether that be later this month in June or perhaps subsequent to that in July or August, to really emphasize the importance of attendance. If you are going to volunteer to be on these groups, we expect that you participate and you attend regularly. I would also note, unless the clerk corrects me, but besides those entities that can actually take action, so that would be Planning Commission and ZBA, the other entities still have the opportunity or the option of allowing people to participate remotely via Zoom or Teams or some other online platform. So I hope we're still accommodating folks, because that's a good way to ensure that we have the appropriate level of participation. Very good. And actually, Mr. Gearbuck, because I spoke to Mr. Harrington about this today, Planning Commission will also be doing a pretty deep dive into the whole site plan review process, not only for Planning Commission's benefit, but also for any member of council or any member of the community who'd like to know more about that. Feel free to attend on Wednesday. We'd love to have you be part of that conversation. Mr. Gearbuck, any other commission, committee, or task force reports?
No.
Okay, Councilmember Dillon?
Okay, the Historic District Commission, we continue to meet monthly, and on a positive note about membership, that with action that we took tonight, we have actually filled our last vacancy on that board, and we're very excited for Meredith Leap to be joining us because she brings a wealth of topical knowledge to the committee, so we're very excited about that. We do continue to meet. We've really formed a great relationship with our historic district residents in coming to us with questions, concerns, and it really is a two-way street so that we don't feel as though we're pressing them to do things. It's more of a collaborative effort to come to the best resolution for modifications to those properties. But that is a body that is extremely busy right now, and we do have to meet every month. And then as far as other committees, the Zoning Board of Appeals met again last week to address an additional aspect of a previous ZBA issue, and so that was an approved variance. And the Legal Counsel Committee met today. We went through our bid process, and now we are just working through that process, and we're looking forward to bringing some recommendations to council in the near term.
Very good. Mr. Seal, any commission, committee, or task force reports?
Just an announcement that on Thursday, June 16th, is going to be the next meeting of our cemetery board. Be at 3 p.m. here in City Hall.
Very good. Mr. Commander Sulek, any commission, committee, or task force reports?
Yes, I do. First off, I'd like to thank everyone, including all my council colleagues. We had a very nice Pride flag raising ceremony. Geez, it was just yesterday. We had great weather. It was well attended, and there was a real strong spirit of support and something that we need more of to accept and support one another. So thank you for everyone that attended. The DEI will continue to have some educational programs, including a LGBTQ language and issue presentation coming up here on June 23rd. We have a community pride pledge that's on Facebook and social media, just pledging your support for Pride Month. And then the Pride Picnic is coming up on June 26th. It's at Teff Park. It's in the pavilion right behind the rec center. It was a real fun event last year, and we're hoping that it'll be well attended again. And let's move on to the Saline Youth Council. Continue to meet, struggle with some quorum challenges, but we are recruiting and going to continue to meet over the summer and see what we can do and try to add some new members. Let me jump back to the DEI for a statement in regards to the gun violence and diversity, equity, and inclusion. I have a statement that I'll read really quickly, if you'll so indulge. We emphasize with men, women, children, and their families in Buffalo, Uvalde, and those in the 20 other cities since Uvalde who suffered from yet another mass shooting. We cry hardest for the children as we go home to hug our own. But sadly, such shootings are now as American as apple pie. With regards to the youngest among us, our children, firearms are the second leading cause of death among U.S. children and adolescents, and I think we heard that earlier. African American children and teens are over 8 times more likely to die from firearm homicide than their white counterparts. Rates of firearm suicide for children and teens living in rural areas are twice as high as their urban populations. There are more horrific statistics about gun violence than we could share at this time, and it's not necessary as we are seeing it, reading it, living it every day. So let's fix it. If you own a gun, store it safely. And tonight, or anytime, our police chief has the safety locks to hand out, as it was also mentioned earlier. I can't emphasize that enough. That's one simple safety measure that every gun owner can take. So if you own a gun, know how to use it safely, and teach everyone else who might have access to it how to use it safely. There are local businesses in Washtenaw that can help with this. And whether you own a gun or not, contact your representatives and encourage them to actively take measures that will protect all of our children. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Kraus, any board, commission, or committee reports?
Not this time.
Very good. Then let's transition to reports or other announcements. Mr. Delorco, do you have any?
I have none, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Gearbaugh.
Just a couple, basically for the Farm Museum, please, it's open. We'd like to have members come out. We do have sheep again now. And unfortunately, because of avian flu, we've had to restrict our chickens to within the coop itself. It's one of the state's requirements at this point. Otherwise, we'd have to get rid of them, unfortunately. And also, a plug for our July 2nd celebration. I'll be doing it again at our next meeting for the 4th of July at the Depot.
Very good. Councilmember Dillon, any reports or announcements?
You know, the only one that I wanted to make mention of, Mayor, was that, that you and I have spoken about this. There's been a lot of questions, comments on social media of whether or not the city of Saline will be having fireworks this year. The mayor and I have spoken about this, and I think the best thing to do at this point is create some sort of exploration committee to see the viability of it. At this point, the city does not have funds available to finance fireworks. So they would either need to be underwritten by a sponsor or community donations. And so we are going to be looking at what it would take for fireworks within the city. That being said, I do not see it at all plausible that we would have 4th of July fireworks. If fireworks were to happen, they would most likely happen in the fall of maybe this year, maybe next year. Like I said, it will all depend on the outcome of the exploration committee.
Very good. Thank you for noting that. And yes, that will be an item for consideration at our next regular meeting on June 20th. Mr. CEO, reports or announcements?
Nothing, Your Honor.
Mr. Kamir Sulak?
Nothing further.
Councilmember Kraus?
I'm just happy the sheep are back. I'm gonna go see them. Like those things.
If sheep make you happy, you know? Okay. Well, with that, we will transition to our second public comment period. Under the Open Meetings Act, any citizen may come forward at this time, make comment or question the city council. This public comment period will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Anyone who would like to speak is requested but not required to state his or her name and address for the record. Are there any citizen comments from those in the audience?
I'm sorry, Mary Hess. And my concern is for the 15 to 20 food trucks that are proposed for the park, because I think it may be starting something as far as a big plan. And I think there should be an application that with the understanding, someone brought up very important, will they be using our electricity? And I think there should be a form that says you shall not be using our electricity. And also, food trucks leave a lot of trash. Who's going to pick up the trash? I think that's important too. As far as the pickup, you shall pick up after yourself. I think there are certain things, this is very, very quick, and it could have a lot of problems as far as erosion of the soil, and there's a lot of concerns. And 15 to 20 is to me like 7 to 10 would be, because there's always more and there's always more. And I think with our city parks, there's a lot of money put into the care with the DPW and the city. And I would hope that the outsiders would have to also be concerned about their care and the welfare. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mrs. Hess, there is an application and a policy, and if you'd like a copy of that, I know the clerk's office would be delighted to provide that. Are there any additional citizen comments from those in the audience today? Please, you have 3 minutes.
I'll be brief. Changming Fan, Mr. Mayor, council friends, many thanks. After that, I will have 2 comments. Thanks, Mr. Commissioner, to come here. And also, thank you for Delcor, Ms. Delcor and Jack Seal supporting me for the project of the salt. And really appreciate that you include me as the Saline citizen. I want to have one comment after I listened to the speech of Mr. Mayor at the immoral meeting. I'm deeply moved about the history of Saline, how many people died for this beautiful city, and also our founding father created city. After that, with encouragement of Mr. Dean and Janet, I visited the tomb of the founding father and finally found out his tomb and his family. And also I have one discovery, there's a big hole just next to it. So we have to solve the problem. We don't want our founding father and his family rest next to a big hole. So how can we do that? I like to volunteer. I'm a good digger. I like to fix it, but have to get permission, have to know the rule. So please include me, try to fix it. And the second comment is that thank you, Mayor and CEO, and this Friday, I'm going to have a meeting with you presenting the basic idea of the SALT project. That's again is follow the first comment. We got to take the heritage of the founding father, horizontally explore and find out the beautiful city horizontally. To preserve the history, we got to go upwards, higher, bigger area. So that is the thing I cannot wait to present to you. And also, Mr. Mayor encouraged me to, including you, Commissioner. So I thank you so much. I cannot wait, and hopefully everybody can give me a hand. And then preserve the city, and then continue our beautiful, beautiful history of this wonderful city. And again, thank you so much to include me as the Chinese American. I just really feel that I just, this is a great honor to me, and thank you again.
Thank you. And yeah, just to follow up, if there is an issue at the cemetery, a hole or a trip hazard or any issue, make sure we communicate that to the clerk's office and DPW, and we will get that corrected. Thank you. Any additional comments, please? Carl? Yep, you'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor, council, staff. I wanted to stop by and introduce myself. My name is Carl Barr. I'm an attorney, and I'm running for 14A District Court Judge. On St. Patrick's Day, Judge Tabby reached out to me, indicated that his wife had been sick and that he was going to retire and he would support me to run for his place. So I'm running. About myself, I'm a municipal attorney as well as a regular private attorney. We represent the city of Ypsilanti, represent the Saline Mile and Area Fire Authorities. I believe I'm the only candidate that has been hired by the city in the past. I worked on a case when then City Attorney Alan Grossman was conflicted out of a proposed land deal that did not end up going through. We also do the prosecution for the city of Saline. I'm well acquainted with municipal issues and would wish to serve as your next 14A judge. And I believe that I am the only candidate that has worked all sides of each issues before the court. I have prosecuted both for Ypsilanti, Belleville. I have defended cases. I've done civil cases. I've formed courts. I created the Administrative Hearings Bureau for the city of Ypsilanti, which decriminalized a lot of our ordinance enforcement, brought it in-house to City Hall, where city's in control of the scheduling, and all the money stays local. I have also done a lot of work on the nuisance abatement actions. I've defended the city's human rights ordinance in federal court. I live, name and address. Sorry, I should have started with that. Carl Barr, 5996 Versailles Avenue. I live in Scioto Township. My office is in Ypsilanti. I'd be happy to respond to any questions, either if there's time tonight or privately. I understand everybody would like to get home. I have a few cards that I could pass out after the meeting if there's time. But thank you very much.
Thanks, Carl. Appreciate you being here. Thanks for your patience. Any additional citizen comments from those in the audience? Please, Commissioner.
I'll be brief. I just wanted to thank everyone for the gun proclamation this evening. My daughter attends Pleasant Ridge, and so this is very close to home to me when we talk about the drills that we go through, and she's only in first grade. I also appreciate this coming forward and the unanimous behind it, because we can't become numb to this. And so while you may think that this isn't something, it really is. When I was a child at Chelsea schools, we lost our superintendent to gun violence, and that was 1993. We're here in 2022, and we're still facing it every day. So thank you so much. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you for your advocacy, Shannon. Thank you for your patience and attendance this evening. Appreciate it very much. Any additional citizen comments from those in the audience? Clerk Royal, do we receive any communiques in advance of tonight's meeting in which the individual wanted their comments read at this time? No. Is there any other business to come before Saline City Council? Then please note our upcoming meetings, and the chair would be delighted to entertain a motion to adjourn at 8:59 p.m.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Sulak, seconded by Dillon to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
That was a great meeting.
Good, you liked it? Informative?